I couldn't believe my luck as I looked out at the beautiful forest, framed by the big glass windows. I put my feet up on the sofa and sighed contentedly. I've couch surfed a couple dozen times, and I've had mostly great experiences. But this place took the cake. It's usually considered pretty good if you can get a room for yourself when you're couch surfing. I've slept in many living rooms, bunked with other couch surfers in tiny rooms, and on a few occasions camped out on balconies. Hence, I came into this place without any expectations, prepared to take on whatever was offered. The host, Callum, offered me the entire top floor. It was perched on a beautiful 3-storied house, which was nestled in a small clearing at the edge of a forest. It took a while to get to the place. Hitchhiking took me on many detours before I was within walking distance. But it was worth it. So worth it. I sipped my hot chocolate happily, counting my blessings at having landed such a cushy couch surfing gig. All the host had requested in exchange for lodging was for me to hang out with him for dinners. Usually, hosts would request for guests to contribute something that could expand their horizons. Guests could teach them a foreign language, for example, or cook them a cultural dish, or bring over some knickknacks from their hometowns, etc. Hanging out with him for dinners seemed easy enough. He came off pretty decent in his profile, and he had many positive reviews from past couch surfers. I savored the creamy sweetness of the last drops of hot chocolate, then placed the mug down on the coffee table. Without warning, a lazy wave of drowsiness washed over me. I was wiped, I realized. I'd been propped up by the excitement of exploring a new place, checking out the beautiful new accommodations I had for the next few nights. Now that I was settled in, the tendrils of sleep crept swiftly over me. I had a good few hours to rest before dinner. I happily tucked myself into the inner corner of the bed, marveling at the perfect balance it held between firmness and softness. It was going to be a good nap. I awoke with a kink in my back. I needed the nut loose, assuming that I must have slept in wrong posture. On the bright side, I could smell dinner. I followed the delicious wafts down the stairs, and as I turned the corner of the last flight of steps, the sight that came into view warmed the impoverished cockles of my heart. I've been trying to stretch my travel budget as far as it would go, so the meals I've had over the past week had consisted mainly of nearly expired sandwiches on discount and biscuits. What lay on the dining table was a feast fit for a king. Or 3. The various carbs, dips, platters, and mains spilled across the oak surface, and, best of all, they were all vegetarian. I know, don't stone me. I could eat everything there. My eyes actually prickled with tears as I realized the amount of effort and consideration my host had put in. Very few people remember my dietary preferences, which was fine with me since there's no reason to put others out for my choices. But this meal, it looked as if he had scrolled through my couch surfing profile and pictures to pick out the best dishes for me. And there was wine. Lots of wine. I briefly wondered how Callum could afford all these. The food, the house, the elegant furnishings. He looked barely older than 40. But I didn't ask. I figured he was one of those millionaire by 30 types of guys. Or it was family money. It wasn't my business to probe. Dinner lasted 3 hours. Interspersed with bouts of my heartfelt gratitude, Caleb turned out to be a great conversationalist. The conversation flowed naturally, and when it came time for sleep, he seemed reluctant for me to leave. He must have been lonely in this big house. I went to bed stuffed and epically centered. I stretched out under the covers and quickly fell asleep. I wasn't sure what time it was when I woke up. It was pitch black outside. I shifted about in discomfort, there was something hard pressing against my back. I felt about the mattress and my finger slid over a bump in the bedding. Annoyed and puzzled, I dragged myself over to the other side of the bed. Smooth, comfortable. I shut my eyes and dozed off. I woke up again sometime later. My back was aching. I felt about beneath me, and once again there was a big bump in the bedding. In the fog of sleep, my mind took a while to make sense of things. I was still sleeping on the other side of the bed. I hadn't shifted back to the side with the bumps. Was my weight shifting the bedding about? Puzzled, I started to really press down on the bump, feel about it. Then, an icicle of fear seared through my chest. The bump felt like the shape of a face. I pulled back in horror. This can't be, I thought. I'm imagining things. I'm in a strange place, in the dark, and my mind is playing tricks on me. I forced down my fear, compressing it into a tiny, manageable size. Then, I took a deep breath and pressed down on the bump again. Under the tight pressure, the shape of the bump began to show through the surface. A smooth bump, a curve here, another bump there. This time there was no holding back the fear. My blood froze in my veins. The shape of a face pressed clear against the bedsheet. A scream sprang up within me, but got caught in my throat. I was immobile, locked in my terror, hands still pressing down about the shape of the face. Then, the face moved. That broke me free of my paralysis. The screaming that was building within erupted into the night, and I clambered backwards, still screaming, eyes fixed on the bump. I fell off the bed, but immediately picked myself up, legs already pumping. I flung the door open and half ran, half tripped my way down the stairs. Callum shot into view, eyes wide with shock. I realized he must have fallen asleep in the living room on the first floor.
What's happening? Are you okay?
I realized I was still screaming. I stopped abruptly and started sobbing instead.
There's a face upstairs.
Callum looked at me, amazement bleeding into the shock on his face.
I swear there's a face. In the bed. In the mattress.
Caleb continued to look gobsmacked. Then he reached forward to take my arm and led me to the sofa. He was quiet for a long time, just watching as I wept the fear out of my system. When the tears finally stopped, I looked up to see bewilderment on his face.
You can see her too?
He said, his voice laced with wonderment.
Wait, what?
My eyes widened.
You can see her, my sister.
I briefly considered running out into the night, sans backpack and necessities, but I made myself stay in my seat.
What do you mean, your sister?
A somber gloom settled on his face. His eyes hardened.
What you saw, the face, it belongs to my sister.
He sounded guarded, defensive. I didn't know what to say. He looked at me for a moment, then sighed, his expression softening.
I guess I'll have to tell you. I should tell you. It's been so long, so many years of anguish.
After a pause, he continued.
I killed my sister.
Now I was really tempted to go running into the night. Phone, wallet, everything be damned. Instead, I sat stiffly on the sofa, muscles tensed and ready to flee.
It was many years ago. She was evil. She hurt me, often and horribly. She also hurt others. I had to stop her.
Despite myself, I found myself intrigued.
she was born with these abilities. She could do things to my mind. She hurt me. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, crushing weight on my chest, body paralyzed, and there she'd be, standing in the doorway, just looking at me. Once I had a buddy over and left the house for less than half an hour to get us all beers, and when I returned, he was crushed under a shelf, shin shattered and poking out of his skin. It could have been an accident, except the shelf was bolted to the wall.
I sat there for the next hour as the stories of his past unfolded, her screaming in his mind until he almost went mad, him coming to and realizing he had been carving words into his flesh, him seeing ants crawling under his skin and scratching bloody streaks into his flesh.
One night, I had enough. I knew that she had powers, so I had to be very careful. I'm just glad she couldn't read my mind.
I wasn't even thinking about running anymore. I was fascinated. I was also starting to feel sorry for him. More so than for his sister.
That night, she had inserted a nightmare into my head. Again. I knew it was her, because by the end of the nightmare, her face appeared, and she was smirking. When I woke up, there she was, in the doorway, smirking. It was the last straw. Long story short, I made a plan. My sister loves wine. Loved wine. I spiked one of the bottles. My sister finally got to that bottle. She passed out and didn't wake up.
He cleared his throat.
I smothered her.
He darted a nervous look at me. I kept my face expressionless.
Then I couldn't find a way to get her body out of the house without being seen by the live-in help, who lived in a converted shed in the garden. I fired her soon after, though. I needed a way to get my sister's body out of the house without being seen. So I stuffed her in a mattress and sewed it back up.
I flinched. That explained a lot.
I spilled some wine on it as an excuse to get rid of the mattress and dragged it out to dispose of it. I drove to another part of the forest and buried it somewhere in there. But somehow her spirit stayed. She's been here, and she's been tormenting me for the past decade. Just pacing about the house, showing up at random places. She can't get into the living room, but that's it. My only safe space. She can even follow me out of the house. She's weaker in death. She can't control me, can't make things happen. Not anymore, but her presence. And sometimes she still succeeds in inserting terrifying images in my head. That's why I've been hosting couch surfers. I need the company, the distraction. I need the company to keep me sane.
He looked at me anxiously. Then a curious wonder seeped into his eyes.
But no one else has been able to see her. No one but you.
Wow. Yay. Lucky me, I thought.
You're special. I think you're God sent. To help me end this, once and for all.
I considered running again. It sounded like he had done what he thought he had to do. He did it to protect himself and others. I could understand that. I didn't agree with how he did it, but I couldn't say for sure if I had been in his shoes living my whole life in fear, that I would have done anything different. I didn't think he was an evil man, but now he was asking for my help to get rid of a vengeful ghost. That was pushing things too far.
I'm not an exorcist. I'm nobody. I'm just a traveler.
I stammered.
I just need you to say a few words. I'll settle the rest.
I looked at him in confusion.
Say a few words? Settle the rest?
He looked thoughtful for a few moments, and then he spoke.
Well, I guess I'd best tell you. There's no point in hiding it. I've been researching for years on how to get rid of her. I finally found something worth pursuing.
He walked over to the old teak cupboard and pulled out a box. He opened it. In it were a few candles, a jar of what seemed like black paint, a couple of trinkets, and a piece of paper.
I read something this lady posted on an obscure website. Her mother and her are practitioners of arcane magic, and they had this way to bind a soul to a place. You just need to use this jar of, well, she didn't say exactly what it was, some mixture. You use it to paint some symbols on the floor of the house. Place these other objects in certain positions.
He saw my raised eyebrow.
You might not believe it, but it's true. I went to find the lady. I found them and followed them to one of their jobs. They were helping someone deal with a lingering spirit in his house. I couldn't see the ghost, but I felt it. They performed the ritual, chanted the name of the spirit, and I felt it whoosh by me. I heard a faint shriek, and suddenly there was a dark shadow within the symbols she had drawn. It was real. Real. I checked with the person who hired them a few months later. He told me that he moved out and hasn't been bothered by the spirit since. I know too, because once I placed a box in the cupboard here, she couldn't get near me. Couldn't even enter the living room.
I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
Implausible story, twisted fairy tale aside, whether I believe you or not, why would you need me? You have the box of things they gave you. Why don't you do it yourself?
I was slowly inching towards the door as I spoke. He was beginning to sound unhinged, but at a subconscious level I believed him. There was something undeniable in his eyes, in the way he told the story. At the very least, he believed his words to be the truth.
I need 2 people for the ritual. 2 people who can both see her. That was the requirement. That's where the lady and her mother had to work together.
I could see where he was going, but I wasn't helping. No way. Even if I didn't believe in it, I was about to humor him in dabbling in the dark arts. I am, deep down, a really superstitious person. And I was terrified of those things. Of the face upstairs.
Are you sure you were never in the spiritual field?
He asked.
Doesn't make much sense that you can see her too. I've met so many people, hosted so many couch surfers, and none of them could even detect her, much less see her in the way you did. What were you doing before you quit and took up traveling?
I'm definitely not in the spiritual field.
Like I said, I'm a superstitious person. I wouldn't go anywhere within 1,000 leagues of that field.
I was a psychologist before I quit.
You were a psychologist. Did you maybe do more alternative therapies, like hypnotism, Reiki?
No, definitely not. And to be honest, I quit because weird shit kept happening to me. I quit to clear my head, stay as far away from weird, supernatural things as possible, so no, I'm not gonna help you.
Please.
He grabbed my shoulders and stared intensely into my eyes. His eyes brimmed with desperation and pain. Unwillingly, I felt myself soften.
I'm terrified of these things, okay? I'm not brave. I want to help you, but I really don't think I can.
Take what you've experienced tonight and multiply it tenfold. Then imagine living through it every single moment, every single hour of your life for the next 10 years.
I couldn't picture it. The intense horror, the crippling fear, stretching out into years. It was cruel to leave him to his fate. I regretted it even as I spoke.
Okay, I'll help you. But we try it just once. Then we're done, alright?
Thank you. Thank you. Oh God. You're my savior, thank you.
He wept in relief.
But I need your phone. Mine's in the bedroom, and no way am I going up there. I need to let my people know where I am, in case something goes wrong.
I didn't mention that one of the things I thought would go wrong was him killing me to keep his crime quiet. He nodded and passed me his phone. I excused myself as he set up the ritual stuff and went to the edge of the living room, not stepping outside. I sent out a few messages and emails detailing my location and Callum's details. Then I gasped and dropped the phone in shock. She was right in front of me, staring, a dark silhouette, a shadow with a face. Then images flooded my brain. Callum, much younger, choking me out, then resuscitating me. Callum laughing as I gasped air into my lungs, then strangling me again. Callum killing a pet hamster, breaking its neck in front of me. Callum's friend manhandling me, attacking me. Me getting free and sending the shelf crashing down on him. Callum firing shots into an older couple in one of the bedrooms. Callum calling the police to report a burglary attempt gone wrong, that they shot his parents. Callum threatening to kill me if I reported him, dragging me out of the bedroom as I screamed and screamed, tears pouring down my cheeks. Callum at the funeral, fake crying, then flashing me a cold smile when he caught me staring. Callum breaking my arm with a door slam. That was the last image before I woke up. To Callum shaking me. I nearly screamed when I saw his face. So similar was it to the image of him standing over me after resuscitating me. I don't know how I did it, but I kept a straight face. It was like every motion within me went dead. I felt nothing but an unnatural calm and a sudden, clear focus. I could not let him know what I knew. It was his sister's memories. She had inserted her memories in my head to explain her side of the story, why she had done the things she had. I plastered a look of confusion on my face.
What happened?
You fainted. You just fell to the floor.
I faked a look of realization, followed by horror.
I saw her. She appeared before me. I must have passed out from the shock.
She can't get to you anymore. Soon she can. Come on. We need to stop her. Permanently.
He gestured to the odd symbols he had written on the floor.
All you need to do is stand here.
He marked a spot on the floor.
And read the following.
He passed me a piece of paper from the box. The words on the page were unrecognizable, but he had written the English phonetic equivalents below. It was a strange tongue indeed. But one word stood out.
Ava?
I asked.
Yeah, that's her name. We need to chant her name together. And she'd be bound to this space. Forever. I could move house and be free of her forever.
All right then. Let's do this. Get it over with.
I stood in the spot he indicated and watched as Callum started the ritual. He was trembling with excitement, anticipation, probably imagining a life free of his sister's wrath. He drew odd symbols in the air, made strange gestures, all the while chanting loud words I'd never heard before, words that brought a chill to my spine. Ava appeared at the periphery of the room, unnoticed by Callum. She was trying to get closer, but couldn't. I looked straight at her, then nodded, hoping she would somehow grasp my intention. Callum reached the peak of his performance and gestured at me to read from the paper. I painstakingly pronounced each word, then paused as he held out a palm to me just before I reached the last word. We looked each other in the eyes, and in perfect timing, we said the last word.
Callum.
I heard whispered from the dark figure at the edge of the room. Shock and confusion boomed on Callum's face. It looked almost comical, juxtaposed against the arcane backdrop and the dark silhouette hovering behind him. Then the confusion on his face crumbled in anger.
You! What have you done?
He lunged at me. I ducked, scuttling out of the way. I turned back, half in fear, half in anticipation. He leapt toward me. I flinched. Then he thudded into something invisible and fell back on the floor. He looked bewildered for a second. Then his face contorted in fear and horror. I spent the next 5 minutes just watching as he slammed again and again into the invisible barrier about him, cursing, weeping, screaming, begging. I couldn't bear to watch any more. I turned away. Then, before my eyes, a beautiful young lady appeared. Ava now looked perfectly normal and seemed almost alive, except for the fact that I could see through her. She looked like a classic illustration of a ghost, of a friendly ghost at least, for she was smiling, an exquisite, mesmerizing smile which held such warmth and gratitude that my heart ached.
Thank you,
she whispered. She reached out her hand. I reached out to touch it and watched, entranced, as she dissolved into the ether. Friggin' fairy tale indeed, I thought in wonder. I felt a strange, beatific sense of peace. I walked up the steps and packed my stuff, still in a daze. I came back down, backpack slung on my shoulders. In my peculiar, blissful trance, I didn't even notice his yelling anymore. I was filled with an extraordinary pride and happiness for what I'd done for Ava. I walked out into the night, not turning to look at Callum, whom I vaguely registered to still be yelling at me.
No, please. She got to you too. Come back. Please.
A momentary twinge of doubt bubbled up. Then I closed the heavy wooden door, muffling the screams. The bubble popped. I breathed in the fresh air and began my walk to the main road.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Venetas is in our hands. It's left to us, guys. And we gotta do something with it.
Anyone who's been a part of the Press Start family for any amount of time knows that I truly appreciate and value the relationship that I have with today's sponsor, Venetas. They are truly an outstanding company with great quality products that I can truly get behind and put my stamp of approval on. Their customer service is absolutely hands down some of the best on the marketplace. If you reach out to them for any reason, your emails are typically responded to within hours, not days, hours. And not only do they promise to make it right, they promise to make it better. And as a thank you for your support, they are offering a 10% discount on any orders if you use the code PressStartMom at checkout. They do ship internationally, including Canada, and 100% stand by the quality of their products. And so do I. Thank you, Venetas, for sponsoring this video, and thank you to all of you for checking out Venetas.